The story of the Children of Hurin is one that is well known to those who are acquainted with the history and lore of Middle-earth. The story of Turin and his tragic fate is one that inspires compassion and courage. That sorrowful life and courageous determination extend beyond Turin himself to the other members of his family. Turin's father, Hurin Thalion, is one who suffered greatly and yet showed valor and strength amidst that suffering. The Narn Chin Hurin tells the story of Hurin and how the course led him to his own death. However, there is more to the story of Hurin than is usually told. While there may be uncertainty as to the accuracy of this less well-known account, I shall relate it nonetheless, in honor of Hurin Thalion, the sufferer and yet the strong. Now Hurin, coming into Dimbar, summoned his strength and went on alone towards the dark feet of the acquainted. All the land was cold and desolate, and when at last it rose steeply before him, and he could see no way to go further, he halted and looked about him in little hope. He stood now at the foot of a great fall of stones beneath a sheer rock wall, and he did not know that this was all that was now left to see of the old way of escape. The dry river was blocked, and the arched gate was buried. Then Hurin looked up to the grey sky, thinking that by fortune he might once more descry the eagles, as he had done long ago in his youth. But he saw only the shadows blowing from the east, and clouds swirling about the inaccessible peaks, and wind hissed over the stones. But the watch of the great eagles was now redoubled, and they marked Hurin well, far below forlorn in the failing light. And straightway sorrowful himself, since the tidings seemed great, brought word to Torgon. But Torgon said, "Nay, this is past belief. Unless Morgoth sleeps, you are mistaken." "Nay, not so," answered sorrowful. "If the eagles of Manwë were wont to err thus, Lord, your hiding would have been in vain." "Then your words bode ill," said Torgon, "for they can mean only that even Hurin Thalion hath surrendered to the will of Morgoth. My heart is shut." But when he had dismissed sorrowful, Torgon sat long in thought, and he was troubled, remembering the deeds of Hurin. And he opened his heart, and he said to the eagles to seek for Hurin, and to bring him, if they could, to Gondor. But it was too late, and they saw him never again in light or in shadow. For Hurin stood at last in despair before the stern silence of the acquainted, and the westering sun, piercing the clouds, stained his white hair with red. Then he cried aloud in the wilderness, heedless of any ears, and he cursed the pitiless land, hard as the hearts of elves and men. And he stood at last upon a great stone, and spreading wide his arms, looking towards Gondor, he called in a great voice, "Torgon, Torgon, remember the fen of Sirac." And again, "Torgon, Hurin calls you. O Torgon, will you not hear in your hidden halls?" But there was no answer, and all that he heard was wind in the dry grasses. "Even so they hissed in Sirac at the sunset," he said. And as he spoke, the sun went behind the mountains of shadow, and the darkness fell about him, and the wind ceased, and there was silence in the waste. Yet there were ears that had heard the words that Hurin spoke, and eyes that marked well his gestures, and report of all came soon to the dark throne in the north. Then Morgoth smiled, and he knew now clearly in what region Torgon dwelt, though because of the eagles no spy of his could yet come within sight of the land behind the encircling mountains. This was the first evil that the freedom of Hurin achieved. As darkness fell, Hurin stumbled from the stone, and fell as one aswoon into a deep sleep of grief. But in his sleep he heard the voice of Morn lamenting, and often she spoke his name, and it seemed to him that her voice came out of Bethel. Therefore, when he awoke with the coming of day, he arose and returned, and he came back to the ford, and as one led by an unseen hand, he went along the eaves of Bethel, until he came in 4 days' journey to the table, and all his scanty food was then spent, and he was famished. But he went on like the shadow of a man driven by a dark wind, and he came to the crossings by night, and there he passed over into Bethel. The night sentinels saw him, but they were filled with dread, so that they did not dare to move or cry out, for they thought that they saw a ghost out of some old battle mound that walked with darkness about it. and for many days after men feared to be near the crossings at night, save in great company with fire kindled. But Hurin passed on, and at evening of the 6th day he came at last to the place of the burning of Glauron, and saw the tall stone standing near the brink of Cabin Naoamath. But Hurin did not look at the stone, for he knew what was written there, and his eyes had seen that he was not alone. Sitting in the shadow of the stone was a figure, bent over his knees. Some homeless wanderer, broken with age, it seemed, too wayworn to heed his coming, but his rags were the remnants of a woman's garb. At length, as Hurin stood there, silent, she cast back her tattered hood, and lifted up her face slowly, haggard and hungry as a long-hunted wolf. Grey she was, sharp-nosed with broken teeth, and with a lean hand she clawed at the cloak upon her breast. But suddenly her eyes looked into his, and then Hurin knew her, for though they were wild now and full of fear, a light still gleamed in them, hard to endure, the open light that long ago had earned her name, Elothuin, proudest of mortal women in the days of old. Elothuin, Elothuin, Hurin cried, and she rose and stumbled forward, and he caught her in his arms. You come at last, she said. I have waited too long. It was a dark road. I have come as I could, he answered. But you are late, she said, too late. They are lost. I know, he said, but thou art not. Almost, she said. I am spent utterly. I should go with the sun. They are lost. She clutched at his cloak. Little time is left, she said. If you know, tell me. How did she find him? But Hurin did not answer, and he sat beside the stone with Morn in his arms, and they did not speak again. The sun went down, and Morn sighed and clasped his hand, and was still, and Hurin knew that she had died. So passed Morn, the proud and fair, and Hurin looked down at her in the twilight, and it seemed that the lines of grief and cruel hardship were smoothed away. Cold and pale and stern was her face. She was not conquered, he said, and he closed her eyes and sat on unmoving beside her as night drew down. The waters of Cabin Naoamath roared on, but he heard no sound and saw nothing, and he felt nothing, for his heart was stone within him, and he thought that he would sit there until he too died. Then there came a chill wind and drove sharp rain in his face, and suddenly he was roused, and out of a deep black anger rose in him like a smoke, mastering reason, so that all his desire was to seek vengeance for his wrongs and for the wrongs of his kin, accusing in his anguish all those who had ever had dealings with them. He arose and lifted Morn up, and suddenly he knew that it was beyond his strength to bear her. He was hungry and old and weary as winter. Slowly he laid her down again beside the standing stone. Lie there a little longer, Elothuin, he said, until I return. Not even a wolf would do you more hurt, but the folk of this hard land shall rue the day that you die here. Then Hurin stumbled away, and he came back towards the fort of Taglin, and there he fell beside the hearth in Eleth, and the darkness overcame him, and he lay as one drowned in sleep. In the morning, before the light had recalled him to full waking, he was found by the guards that Hardang had commanded to keep special watch in that place. It was a man named Sargoth who first saw him, and he looked at him in wonder and was afraid, for he thought he knew who this old man was. Come, he cried to others that followed. Look here, it must be Hurin. The young conqueror spoke truly. He has come. Trust you to find trouble as ever, Sargoth, said Hurin. The Hallowed will not be pleased with such findings. What is to be done? Maybe Harding would be better pleased to hear that we had stopped the trouble at his borders and thrust it out. Thrust it out, said Alfred. He was Dolus' son, a young man short and dark, but strong, warlike by Harding, as his father had been. Thrust it out? Of what good would that be? It would come again. It can walk, all the way from Angband, and it is with you, Gus. See, he looks grim and has a sword, but he sleeps deep. Need he wake to more woe? If you would please the chieftain for him, he would end here. Such was the shadow that now fell upon the hearts of men as the power of Morgoth spread, and fear walked far and wide. But not all hearts were yet darkened. Shame upon you, cried Manthur, the captain, who came behind had heard what they said, and upon you most, Arthur, young though you are. At least you have heard of the deeds of Hurin of Hithlum, or did you hold them only fireside fables? What is to be done indeed? So slay him in his sleep is your counsel. Out of hell comes the thought. And so does he, answered Atheling, if indeed he is Hurin. Who knows? It can soon be known, said Manthur. Then coming to Hurin as he lay, he knelt, and raised his hand and kissed it. "Awake," he cried, "help is near, and if you are Hurin, there is no help that I would think enough, and no help that he will not repay with evil," said Arthur. "He comes from England, I say. What he may do is unknown," said Mantle. "What he has done we know, and our debt is unpaid." Then he called again in a loud voice, "Hail, Hurin Thalion! Hail, captain of men!" Thereupon Hurin opened his eyes, remembering evil words that he had heard in the drowse before waking, and he saw men about him with weapons in hand. He stood up stiffly, fumbling at his sword, and he glared upon them in anger and scorn. "Cours," he cried, "will you slay an old man sleeping? You look like men, but you are orcs under the skin, I guess. Come then, slay me awake if you dare, but it will not please your black master, I think. I am Hurin, Galdor's son, a name that orcs at least will remember." "Nay, nay," said Mantle, "dream not. We are men, but these are evil days of doubt, and we are hard pressed. It is perilous here. Do you not come with us? At least we can find you food and rest." "Rest," said Hurin, "you cannot find me that, but food I will take my need." The Mantle gave him a little bread and meat and water, but they seemed to choke him, and he spat them forth. "How far is it to the house of your lord?" he asked. "Until I have seen him, the food that you denied to my beloved will not go down my throat." "He raves and he scorns us," muttered Alfred. "What did I say?" The Mantle looked at him with pity, though he did not understand his words. "It is a long road for the weary lord," he said, "and the house of Hurin Thalion is hidden from strangers. Then leave me thither," said Hurin. "I will go as I can. I have an errand to that house." Soon they set forth. Of his strong company, Menthil left most of the duty, but he himself went with Hurin, and with him he took for him. Hurin walked as he could, but after a time he began to stumble and fall, and yet he always rose again and struggled on, and he would not allow them to support him. And this way at last, with many halts, they came to the hall of Holiday and Obo Hallow, deep in the forest, and he knew of their coming, for Alfred, unbidden, had run ahead and brought the tidings before them, and he did not fail to report the wild words of Hurin at his waking, and his spitting forth of their food. So it was that they found the hall well guarded, with many men, and the outer guard, and men at the doors. At the gate of the guard, the captain of the guard stayed them. "Deliver the prisoner to me," he said. "Prisoner," said Mantle, "I have no prisoner, but a man you should honor." "The Hallard's words, not mine," said the captain, "but you may come too. He has words for you also." Then they led Hurin before the chieftain, and Hurin did not greet him, but sat in his great chair and eyed Hurin up and down. But Hurin returned the gaze, and held himself as stiffly as he could, though he leaned on his staff. So he stood a while in silence, until at last he sank to the ground. "Lo," he said, "I see that there are so few chairs in Breathitt that a guest must sit on the floor." "Guest," said Hurin, "not one bidden by me, but bring the old car's store, if he will not disdain it, though he spits on our food." Mantle was grieved at this discourtesy, and hearing one laugh in the shadow behind the great chair, he looked and saw that it was Alfred, and his face darkened in wrath. "Your pardon, lord," he said to Hurin. "There was misunderstanding here." Then turning to Harding, he drew himself up. "Has my company a new captain then, my Hallett?" he said. "For otherwise I do not understand how one who has left his duty and broken my command should stand here unrebuked. He has brought news before me, I see, but it seems he forgot the name of the guest, or Hurin Thalion will not have been left to stand." "The name was told me," answered Harding, "and his fair words also which bear it out. Such are the house of Harding, but it is the part of a stranger to name himself first in my house, and I waited to hear him, also to hear his errand hither, since he says that he has one. But as for your duty, such matters are not dealt with before strangers." Then he turned towards Harding, who sat meanwhile bent on the low stool. His eyes were closed, and he seemed to take no heed of what was said. "Well, Hurin of Thalion," said Harding, "what of your errand? Is it a matter of haste? Or will you not perhaps take thought, and rest and speak of it later, more at your ease? Meanwhile we may find you some food less distasteful." Harding's tone was now more gentle, and he rose as he spoke, for he was a weary man, and he had marked the displeasure on the faces of others besides Mantle. Then suddenly Hurin rose to his feet. "Well, Master Reed of the Bog," he said, "so you've been with each breath, do you? Beware lest mine blow you flat. Go, take thought to stiffen you, ere I call on you again. Scorner of grey hairs, starver of wanderers, this store fits you better." With that he cast the store at Harding, so that it smote him on the forehead, and then he turned to walk from the hall. Some of the men gave way, rather in pity or in fear of his wrath, but Arthur ran before him. "Not so swift, Cor Hurin," he cried. "At least I no longer doubt your name. You bring your manners from England, but we do not love off deeds in hall. You have assaulted the chieftain in his chair, and a prisoner you now shall be, whatever your name." "I thank you, Captain Arthur," said Harding, who sat still in his chair, while some stanched the blood that flowed from his brow. "Now let the old madman be put in bonds and kept close. I will judge him later." Then they put thongs upon Hurin's arms and a halter about his neck, and led him away. And he made no more resistance, for the wrath had won off him, and he walked as one in a dream, with eyes closed. But Mantle, though Alfred scowled at him, put his arm about the old man's shoulder, and steered him so that he could not stumble. But when Hurin was shut in a cave, and Mantle could do no more to help him, he returned to the hall. There he found Alfred in speech with Harding, and though they fell silent on his coming, he caught the last words that Alfred spoke, and it seemed to him that Alfred urged that Hurin should be put to death straight away. "Now, Captain Alfred," he said, "things go well for you today. I have seen you at like sports before goading an old badger and having him killed when he bites. Not so swift, Captain Alfred, nor you, Harding coward. This is no matter for lordly dealing out of here. The coming of Hurin and his welcome here concerns all the folk, and they shall hear all that is said before any judgment is given. You have leave to go," said Harding. "Return to your duty on the marches until Captain Alfred comes to take command." "Nay, lord," said Mantle, "I have no duty. I am out of your service from today. I left Sargoth in charge, a woodsman somewhat older and wiser than one you name. In due time I will return to my old marches." For Mantle was a descendant of Haldred, and he had a little land of his own in the east march of Berthill, besides Sirion, where it runs through Dunbar. But all the folk of Berthill were freemen, holding their homesteads and more or less land about them of their right. The master was chosen from the descendants of Haldred, out of reverence for the deeds of Haleth and Haldor, and though as yet the mastership had been given, as if it were a lordship or kingdom, to the eldest of the eldest this line, the folk had had the right to set anyone aside or to remove him for grave cause, and some knew well enough that Halathor had tried to have Branded Elaine passed over in his own favour. But now I will summon the folk. As he went to the door, Alfred seized his bow to shoot Mantle down, but Harding restrained him. "Not yet," he said. But Mantle was unaware of this, though some in the hall had marked it, and he went out and sent all he could find that were willing to go as messengers to bring together all the masters of homesteads and any others that could be spared. Now rumor ran wild through the woods, and the tales grew in the telling, and some said this and some that, and the most spoke in praise of the Hallard, and set forth Hurin in the likeness of some fell orc chieftain, for Arthur was also busy with messengers. Soon there was a great concourse of folk, and the small town about the Hall's chieftains was swelled with tents and booths, but all the men bore arms, for fear lest a sudden alarm should come from the marches. When he had sent on his messengers, Mantle went to Hurin's prison, and the guards would not let him enter. "Come," said Mantle, "you know well that it is our good custom that any prisoner should have a friend that may come to him, and see how he fares and give him counsel." "The friend is chosen by the prisoner," the guards answered, "but this wild man has no friends." "He has one," said Mantle, "and I ask leave to offer myself to his choice." "The Hallard forbids us to admit any save the guards," they said. But Mantle, who was wise in the laws and customs of the people, replied, "No doubt, but in this he hath no right. Why is he income or in bondage? We do not bind old men and wanderers because they speak ill words when distraught. This one is in prison because of his assault upon Harding, and Harding cannot judge his own cause, but must bring his grievance to the judgment of the folk. Meanwhile, he cannot deny to the prisoner our counsel and help. If he were wise, he would see that he does not in this way advance his own cause. But maybe another mouth spoke for him. True, they said Arfrank brought the order." "Then forget it," said Mantle, for Arfrank was under other orders to remain on his duty on the marches. Choose them between a young renegade and the laws of the folk. And the guards led him into the cave, for Mantle was well esteemed in Brethil, and men did not like the masters who tried to overrule the folk. Mantle found Hurin sitting on a bench. There were fetters on his ankles, but his hands were unbound, and there was some food before him untasted. He did not look up. "Hell, lord," said Mantle, "things have not gone as they should, nor as I would have ordered them. But now you have need of a friend." "I have no friend, and wish for none in this land," said Hurin. "One stands before you," answered Mantle. "Do not scorn me. For now, alas, the matter between you and Harding Hallard must be brought to the judgment of the folk, and it will be well, as our law allows, to have a friend to counsel you and plead your case. I will not plead, and I need no counsel, said Hurin. You need this counsel at least, said Mantle. Master your wrath for the time and take some food, so that you may have strength before your enemies. I do not know what is your errand here, but it will speed better if you are not starved. Do not slay yourself while there is hope. Slay myself, cried Hurin, and he staggered up and leaned against the wall, and his eyes were red. Should I be dragged before a rabble of woodmen with fetters upon me, to hear what death they would give me? I would slay myself first, if my hands are left free. Then suddenly, swift as an old-trapped beast, he sprang forward, and before Mantle could avoid him, he snatched a knife from his belt. Then he sank down on the bench. You could have had the knife as a gift, said Mantle, but we do not deem self-slaughter a noble deed in those who have not lost a reason. Hide the knife and keep it for some better use. But have a care, for it is a fell blade from a forge of the dwarves. Now, Lord, will you not take me for your friend? Say no word, but if you will now eat with me, I will take that for yea. Then Hurin looked at him, and the wrath left his eyes, and together they drank and ate in silence. And when all was finished, Hurin said, By your voice you have overcome me. Never since the day of dread have I heard any man's voice so fair. Alas, alas, it calls to my mind the voices in my father's house, long ago when the shadows seemed far away. That may well be, said Mantle. Hera, my foremother, was sister of thy mother, Hereth. Then thou art both kin and friend, said Hurin. But not I alone, said Mantle. We are few and have little wealth, but we too are beguiled, and bound by many ties to your people. Your name has long been held in honor here, but no news of your deeds would have reached us, if Haldi and Hundor had not marched to the Nonaianeth. There they fell, but three of the company returned, but they were succored by Mablung of Doriath, and healed of the wounds. The days have gone dark since then, and many hearts are overshadowed, but not all. Yet the voice of your chieftain comes from the shadows, said Hurin, and your folk obey him, even in deeds of dishonor and cruelty. Grief darkens your eyes, Lord, dare I say it. But lest this should prove true, let us take counsel together. For I see peril of evil ahead, both to thee and to my folk, though maybe wisdom may avert it. Of one thing I must warn thee, though it may not please thee. Harding is a lesser man than his fathers, but I saw no evil in him till he heard of thy coming. Thou bringest a shadow with thee, Hurin Thalion, in which lesser shadows grow darker. Dark words from a friend, said Hurin. Long I lived in the shadow, but I endured it and did not yield. If there is any darkness upon me, it is only that grief beyond grief has robbed me of life. But in the shadow I have no part. Nevertheless, I say to thee, said Mantle, that it follows behind thee. I know not how thou hast won freedom, but the thought of Morgoth has not forgotten thee. Beware. Do not dote, dotard, you would say, answered Hurin. I will take this message from you, for your fair voice and our kinship, but no more. Let us speak of other things or cease. The Mantle was patient, and stayed long with Hurin until the evening brought darkness into the cave, and they ate once more together. Then Mantle commanded that a light should be brought to Hurin, and he took his leave until the morrow, and went to his booth with a heavy heart. The next day it was proclaimed at the folkmeet for judgment to be held on the morning following, for already 500 of the headmen had come in, and that was by custom deemed the least number which might count as a full meeting of the folk. Mantle went early to find Hurin, but the guards had been changed. 3 men of Harding's own household now stood at the door, and they were unfriendly. The prisoner was asleep, the leader said, and that is well when they settle his wits. But I am his appointed friend, as was declared yesterday, said Mantle. A friend would leave him in peace while he may have it. To what good would you wake him? Why should my coming wake him more easily than the feet of a jailer, said Mantle. I wish to see how he sleeps. Do you think all men lie but yourself? Nay, nay, but I think that some would fain forget our laws when they do not suit their purpose, answered Mantle. Nonetheless, it seemed to him that he would do little good to Hurin's case if he debated further, and he went away. So it was that many things remained unspoken between them until too late, for when he returned, day was waning. No hindrance was now offered to his entry, and he found Hurin lying on a pallet, and he noted with anger that now he had fetters also upon his wrist, with a short chain between them. A friend delayed is hope denied, said Hurin. I have waited long for thee, but now I am heavy with sleep and my eyes are dim. I came at mid-morning, said Mantle, but they said that thou wert sleeping then. Drowsing and ran hot, said Hurin, but thy voice might have recalled me. I have been so since I broke my fast. That counsel of thine at least I have taken, my friend, but food doth me ill, rather than good. Now I must sleep, but come in the morning. Mantle wondered darkly at this. He could not see Hurin's face, for there was little light left, but bending down he listened to his breathing. Then with a grim face he stood up, and took up Under his cloak such figures remained and went out. "Well, how did you find the wild man?" said the chief guard. "He mused with sleep," answered Manthor. "He must be wakeful tomorrow. Rouse him early, bring food for two, for I will come and break fast with him." The next day, long before the set time at mid-morn, the moot began to assemble. Almost 1,000 had now come, for the most part the odelmen, since the watch on the marches must still be maintained. Soon all the moot ring was filled. This was shaped as a great crescent, with 7 tiers of turf banks, rising up from a smooth floor delved back into the hillside. A high fence was set all about it, and the only entry was by a heavy gate in the stockade that closed the open end of the crescent. In the middle of the lowest tier of seats was set the ingbor, or doomwalk, a great flat stone upon which the herald was set. Those who were brought to judgment stood before the stone and faced the assembly. There was a great babble of voices, but at a horn call silence fell, and the herald entered, and he had many men of his household with him. The gate was closed behind him, and he paced slowly to the stone. Then he stood facing the assembly and hallowed the moot according to custom. First he named Manwë and Mandos, after the manner which the Edain had learned from the Eldar, and then, speaking the old tongue of the folk which was now out of daily use, he declared that the moot was duly set, being the 304th moot of Blether, called to give judgment in a grave matter. When, as custom was all the assembly, cried in the same tongue, "We are waiting," he took a seat upon the stone. Ingborg, caught in the speech of Beleriand, to men that stood by, "Sound the horn, let the prisoner be brought before us." The horn sounded thrice, but for some time no one entered, and the sound of angry voices could be heard outside the fence. At length the gate was thrust open, and 6 men came in bearing horn between them. "I am bought by violence and misuse," he cried. "I will not walk slave-fettered to any moot upon earth, not though elven king should sit there. And while I am bound thus, I deny all authority and justice to your dooms." But the men set him on the ground between the stone and held him there by force. Now it was the custom of the moot that, when any man was brought before them, the herald should be the accuser, and should first in brief recite the misdeed with which he was charged. Whereupon it was his right, by himself, or by the mouth of his friend, to deny the charge, or to offer defense for what he had done. And when these things had been said, if any point was in doubt, or was denied by either side, then witnesses were summoned. Harding, therefore, now stood up, and turning to the assembly, he began to recite the charge. "This prisoner," he said, "whom you see before you, names himself Hurin, Galder's son. Once of Dolorman, but long in Angband whence he came hither, be that as it may." But hereupon Manthor arose, and came before the stone. "By your leave, my lord herald and folk," he cried. "As friend to the prisoner, I claim the right to ask. Is the charge against him any matter that touches the herald in person, or has the herald any grievance against him?" "Grievance!" cried Harding, and anger clouded his wit so that he did not see Manthor's trend. "Grievance indeed! This is not a new fashion in headgear for the moot. I come here with wounds new dressed." "Alas," said Manthor, "but if that is so, I claim that the matter cannot be dealt with in this way. In our law no man may recite an offense against himself, nor may he sit in the seat of judgment while that charge is heard. Is not this the law?" "It is the law," the assembly answered. "Then," said Manthor, "before this charge is heard, some other than Harding, son of Hundad, must be appointed to the stone." Thereupon many names were cried, but most voices in the loudest called upon Manthor. "Nay," said he, "I am engaged to one part, and cannot be judged. Moreover, it is the herald's right in such a case to name the one who should take his place, as doubtless he knows well." "I thank you," said Harding, "though I need no self-chosen lawman to teach me." Then he looked about him as if considering whom he should name, but he was in a black angle, and all wisdom failed him. If he had named any of the headmen there present, things might have gone otherwise. But in an evil moment he chose, and to all men's wonder he cried, "Arvrink, Dolus' son, it seems that the herald needs a friend also today, when lawmen are so put. I summon you to the stone." Silence fell, but when Harding stepped down and Arvrink came to the stone, there was a loud murmuring along the rumor of a coming storm. Arvrink was a young man, not long wedded, and his youth was taken ill by all the older headmen that sat there. And he was not loved for himself, for though he was bold, he was scornful, as was Dolus his father before him. And dark tales were still whispered concerning Dolus, his father, who had been Harding's close friend. For though naught was known for certain, he was found slain far from the battle, with Glower, and the wooden sword that lay by him had been the sword of Brandir. But Arvrink took no heed of the murmur, and bore himself airily, as if it were a light matter soon to be dealt with. "Well," he said, "if that is settled, let us waste no more time. The matter was clear enough." Then standing up he continued to recite it. This prisoner, this wild man, he said, comes from England, as you have heard. He was found within our borders, not by chance, for as he himself declared, he has an errand here. What that may be, he is not revealed, but it cannot be one of goodwill. He hates this folk. As soon as he saw us, he reviled us. We gave him food and he spat on it. I have seen orcs do so, if any were fools enough to show them mercy. From England he comes, it is clear, whatever his name be. But worse followed after. By his own asking, he was brought before the Helen of Bethel, by this man who now calls himself his friend. But when he came into hall, he would not name himself. And when the Helen asked him what was his errand, and bade him rest first, and speak of it later if it pleased him, he began to rave, reviling the Helen, and suddenly he cast a stone on his face, and did him great hurt. It is well for all that he had nothing more deadly to hand, or the Helen would have been slain, as was plainly the prisoner's intent, and it lessens his guilt very little, that the worst did not happen for which the penalty is death. But even so, the Helen sat in the great chair in his hall. To revile him there was an evil deed, and to assault him an outrage. This then is the charge against the prisoner, that he came here with evil intent against us, and against the Helen of Bethel in special, at the bidding of Angban will make us. That gaining the presence of the Helen, he reviled him, and then sought to slay him in his chair. The penalty is under the doom of the mood, but it could justly be death. That it seemed to some that Alvain spoke justly, and to all that he had spoken with skill. For a while no one raised a voice upon either side. Then Alvain, not hiding his smile, rose again and said, "The prisoner may now answer the charge, if he will, but let him be brief and not rave." But Hurin did not speak, though he strained against those that held him. "Prisoner, will you not speak?" said Alvain, and Hurin gave no answer. "So be it," said Alvain, "if he will not speak, not even to deny the charge, then there is no more to do. The charge is made good, and the one that is appointed to the stone must propound to the moot a penalty that seems just." But now Manthel stood up and said, "First he should at least be asked why he would not speak." And to that question reply to be made by his friend. "The question is put," said Alvain with a shrug, "if you know the answer, give it." "Because he is fettered," said Manthel. "Never before have he dragged to the moot and fetters a man yet uncondemned. Still less one of the dying whose name deserves honor, whatsoever may have happened since. Yes, uncondemned, I say, for the accuser has left much in sin that this moot must hear before judgment is given. But this is foolishness," said Alvain, "adon or no, and whatever his name, the prisoner is ungovernable and malicious. The bonds are in need of precaution. Those who come near him must be protected from his violence. If you wish to beget violence," answered Manthel, "what surer way than openly to dishonor a proud man, and owed him years of great grief? And he is one now weakened by hunger and long journey, unarmed among a host. I would ask the folk here assembled, do you deem such caution worthy of the freemen of Bethel, or would you rather that we use the courtesy of oath? The fetters are put on the prisoner by the order of the Helen," said Alvain, "and this he uses white for the restraint of violence in his hall. Therefore this order cannot be gainsaid, save by the full assembly." Then there went up a great shout, "Release him! Release him! Hurin Thalion! Release Hurin Thalion!" None all joined in this cry, yet there were no voices heard on the other side. "Nay, nay," said Alvain, "shouting would not avail. In such a case there must be a vote in due form." Now by custom in matters grave or doubtful, the vote for the moot cast was pebbles, and all who enter bore with them each 2 pebbles, a black and a white, for nay and for yea. But the gathering and counting would take much time, and meanwhile Manthel saw that with each moment the mood of Hurin grew worse. There was another way more simple, he said. There was no danger here to justify the bonds, and so think all who have used the voice. The Helen is in the moot room, and he can remit his own order if he will. "He will," said Haldane, for it seemed to him that the mood of the assembly was rusted, and he hoped by this stroke to regain his favour. "Let the prisoner be released and stand up before you." And the fetters were struck off Hurin's hands and feet. Straightway he stood up, and turning away from Alvain, he faced the assembly. "I am here," he said. "I will answer my name. I am Hurin Thalion, son of Galdo Orkal, lord of the Loman, and once a high captain in the host of King Fingon of the North Realm. Let no man dare to deny it. That should be enough. I will not plead before you. Do as you will. Neither will I bear any words with the upstart whom you permit to sit in the high seat. Let him lie as he will. In the name of the lords of the West, what manner of folk are you, or to what have you become? While the ruin of darkness is all about you, will you sit here in patience, and hear this renegade god ask for a doom of death upon me, because I broke the head of an insolent young man, who I threw in a chair out of it? He should have learned how to treat his elders before you made him your chieftain, forsooth. Death, For Manway, if I had not endured torment for 20 years and 8, if I wars had done on enough, you would not dare to sit here to face me. But I am not dangerous any longer, I hear. So you are brave, I can stand up unbound to be guided. I am broken in war and made tame, be not too sure. He lifted up his arms and nodded his hands. But here, Mantle laid a restraining hand on his shoulder and spoke earnestly in his ear. My lord, you mistake them. Most of your friends, or would be, but there are proud freemen here too. Let me now speak to them. Harding and Alfred said not, but smiled one to another, for Hurin's speech they thought, did his part no good. But Mantle cried, let the Lord Hurin be given a seat while I speak. His wrath you will understand better or maybe forgive when you have heard me. Hear me now, folk of Brethren. My friend does not deny the main charge, but he claims that he was misused and provoked beyond bearing. My master, see, I was captain of the marsh waters that found this man asleep at a hearth in Ella. It was sleepy seen, but he lay wrathful in weariness on the brink of awaking, and as he lay he heard, as I fear, words that were spoken. There was a man called Alfred, dull as his sight. I remember was one of my company, and he should be there still, for such were my orders. As I came behind, I heard his Alfred give counsel to the man who had first found Hurin and guessed at his name. Folk of Brethren, I heard him speak thus. It would be better to slay the old man asleep than thus vent forth her trouble, and so the Hallor would be pleased, said he. Now maybe you will wonder less that when I caught him to full waking, and he found men with weapons all about him, he spoke bitter words to us. One at least of us deserved them. He'd asked for the spice in our food, he took it from my hands, and he did not spit upon it. He spat it forth, or choked him. Have you never, my master, seen a man half starved, who could not swallow food in haste, though he needed it? And this man was in great grief also, and full of anger. Nay, he did not disdain our food, though well he might, if he had known the devices to which some who drove here have fallen. Hear me now and believe me if you may, for witness can be brought. In his prison the Lord Hurin ate with me, for I used him with courtesy. That was 2 days ago, but yesterday he was drowsed and could not speak clearly, nor take counsel with me against the trial today. Little wonder in that, cried Harding. Mantha paused and looked at Harding. Little wonder indeed, my Lord Hamlet, he said, for his food had been drugged. Then Harding in wrath cried out, must the drowsy dreams of this dotard be recited to our weariness? I speak of no dreams, answered Manthorn. Witness will follow. But since against custom I am challenged while I speak, I will answer now. I took away from the prison food of which Hurin had eaten some, but for witnesses I gave it to a hound, and he lies still asleep as if dead. Maybe the Hallett of Brethren did not contrive this himself, the one who was eager to please him. But with what lawful purpose? To restrain him from violence? Forsooth, when he was already fettered and imprisoned, there was malice abroad among us folk of Brethren, and I looked to the assembly to amend it. At this there was a great stir and murmur in the movement, and when Alfred stood up calling for silence, the clamour grew greater. At last, when the assembly had quieted a little, Mantle said, may I now continue, for there was more to be said. Proceed, said Alfred, but let your wind be shortened, and I must warn you all, my masters, to hear this man warily. His good faith cannot be trusted. The prisoner and he are close akin. These words were unwise, for Mantle thought at once. It is so indeed. The mother of Hurin was Harald's daughter of Halmor, once Harald of Brethren, and Hero, her sister, was the mother of my mother. But this lineage does not prove me a liar. More, if Hurin of Thalion be akin to me, he is kinsman of all the house of Harald, yea, and of all this folk. Yet he is treated as an outlaw, a robber, a wild man without honor. Let us proceed into the chief charge, which the accuser has said may bear the penalty of death. You see before you the broken head, though it seems to sit firm on his shoulders and can use his tongue. It was hurt by the cast of a small wooden store. A wicked deed, you will say, and far worse when done to the Hallett of Brethren in his great chair. But my masters, ill deeds may be revoked. Let any one of you in thought set himself in the place of Harding, son of Hundad. Well, here comes Hurin, Lord of Thalion, your kinsman before you, head of a great house, a man whose deeds are sung by elves and men. But he is now grown old, dispossessed, grief-laden, travel-worn. He asks to see you. There you sit at ease in your chair. You do not rise. You do not speak to him. But you eye him up and down as he stands, till he sinks to the floor. Then of your pity and courtesy you cry, bring the old Carl store. Oh, shame and wonder, he flings it at your head. Oh, shame and wonder, wherefore I say that you so dishonor your chair, that you so dishonor your hall, that you so dishonor the folk of Bletho. My masters, I fully admit that it would have been better if the Lord Hurin had shown patience, marvelous patience. Why did he not wait to see what further slights he must endure? Yet as I stood in hall and saw all this, I wondered, and I still wonder when I ask you to tell me, how do you like such manners in this man that we have made harlot of Bletho? Great uproar rose at this question, and Samantha held up his hand, and suddenly all was still again. But under cover of the noise, Harding had drawn near to Arthur to speak with him, and surprised by the silence, he spoke too loud, so that Mantha and Athos also heard Harding say, I would I had not hindered thy shooting. And Arthur answered, I will see the time yet. The Mantha proceeded, I am answered, such manners do not please you, I see. Now what would you have done with the caster of the store? Bound him, put a halter on his neck, shut him in a cave, fettered him, drugged his food, and at last dragged him hither and called for his death? Or would you set him free? Or would you, maybe, ask pardon, or command this harlot to do so? Thereupon there was even greater uproar, and men stood up on the turf banks, clashing their arms and crying, Free! Free! Set him free! And many voices were heard also shouting, Away with this harlot! Put him in the caves! Many of the older men who sat in the lowest tier ran forward, and knelt before Hurin to ask his pardon, and one offered him a staff, and another gave him a fair cloak and a great boat of silver. And when Hurin was so clad, and had his staff in hand, he went to the stone, and stood up on it, in no wise as a suppliant, but as mean as a king. And facing the assembly, he cried in a great voice, I thank you, masters of Bletho, ye present, who have released me from dishonor. There was then justice still in your land, though it has slept and been slow to awake. But now I have a charge to bring in my turn. What is my errand here, it is asked? What think you? Did not Turin my son, and Narn my daughter, die in this land? Alas, from afar I have learned much of the griefs that have here come to pass. Is it then a wonder that a father should seek the grace of his children? More wonder it is, meseems, that none here have yet ever spoken their names to me. Are ye ashamed that ye let Turin my son die for you? That two only dared go with him to face the terror of the worm? That none dared go down to succor him when the battle was over, but the worst evils might thus have been stayed? Ashamed ye may be, but this is not my charge. I do not ask that any in this land should match the son of Hurin in valor. But if I forgive those griefs, shall I forgive this? Hear me, men of Bletho. There lies by the standing stone that you raised an old beggar woman. Long she sat in your land, without fire, without food, without pity. Now she is dead, dead. She was Morn, my wife. Morn, a Lethwin, the lady open fair, who bore Turin, the slayer of Glower. She is dead. If ye, who have some ruth, cry to me that you are guiltless, then I ask, who bears the guilt? By whose command was she thrust out to starve at your doors like an outcast dog? Did your chieftain contrive this? So I believe. But would he not have dealt with me in like manner if he could? Such are his gifts, dishonor, starvation, poison. Have you no part in this? Will you not work at his will? Then how long, masters of Bletho, will you endure him? How long will you suffer this man called Harding to sit in your chair? Now Harding was aghast at this taunt, and his face went white with fear and amazement. But before he could speak, Hurin pointed a long hand at him. See, he cried, there he stands with a sneer on his mouth. Does he deem himself safe? For I am robbed of my sword, and I am old and weary, he thinks. Nay, too often has he called me a wild man. He should see one. Only hands are needed to wean his throat full of lies. With that, Hurin left the stone and strode towards Harding, but he gave back before him, calling his household men about him, and they drew off towards the gate. Thus it appeared to many that Harding admitted his guilt, and they drew their weapons and came down from the banks, crying out upon him. Now there was peril of battle within the hallowed green, for others joined themselves to Harding, some without love for him or his deeds, who none the less held to their loyalty, and would at least defend them from violence, and who could answer before the moved. Mantha stood between the two parties and cried to them to hold their hands and shed no blood in the moot ring. But the spark that he had himself kindled now burst aflame beyond his quenching, and a press of men thrust him aside. Away with this hound, they shouted. Away with Harding, take him to the caves. Down with Harding, up Mantha, we will have Mantha. And they fell upon the men that barred the way to the gates, so that Harding might have time to escape. But Mantha went back to Hurin, who now stood alone by the stone. "Alas, Lord," he said, "I fear that this day holds great peril for us all. There is little I can do, but still I must try to avert the worst evil. It will soon break out, and I must follow. Will you come with me?"
Many fell at the gate on either side ere it was taken. There Offering fought bravely, and was the last to retreat. Then, as he turned to flee, suddenly he drew his bow and shot at Mantle as he stood by the stone. But the arrow missed in his haste and hit on the stone, striking fire beside Mantle as it broke. "Next time nearer," cried Offering as he fled after Harding. Then the rebels burst out of the ring and hotly pursued Harding's men to the open Halland, some half-mile away. But before they could come there, Harding had gained the hall and shut it against them, and there he was now besieged. The hall of the chieftain stood in a garth, with a round earth wall all about it, rising from a dry outer dike. In the wall there was only one gate, from which a stone path led to the great doors. The assailants drove through the gate and swiftly surrounded all the hall, and all was quiet for a while. But Mantle and Horn came to the gate, and Mantle would have a parley. The men said, "Of what use are words? Rats will not come out while the dogs are abroad." And some cried, "Our kin have been slain, and we will avenge them." "Well then," said Mantle, "allow me at least to do what I can." "Do so," they said, "but go not too near, or you may receive a sharp answer." Therefore Mantle stood by the gate and lifted up his great voice, crying out to both sides that they should cease with this kin-slaying, and to those whom he promised that all should go free who came forth without weapons, even Harding, if he would give his word to stand before the moot the next day. And no man should bring any weapon thither, he said. But while he spoke, there came a shot from a window, and an arrow went by the ear of Mantle, and stood deep in the gate-post. And the voice of Offering was heard crying, "Third time should the life best." Now the anger of those without burst forth again, and many rushed to the great doors and tried to break them down. But there was a sortie, and many were slain or hurt, and others also in the garth were wounded by shots from the windows. So the assailants, being now in mad wrath, brought kindlings and great store of wood, and set it by the gate, and they shouted to those within, "See, the sun is setting, we give you till nightfall. If you do not come forth ere then, we will burn the hall, and you in it." Then they all withdrew from the garth out of bowshot, but they made a ring of men all round the outer dike. The sun set, and then came from the hall, and when it was dark, the assailants came back into the garth, bearing the wood. And they piled it against the walls of the hall. Then some, bearing flaming pine torches, ran across the garth to put fire on the faggots. One was shot to his death, but others reached the piles, and soon they began to blaze. Mantle stood aghast at the ruin of the hall, and the wicked deed of the burning of men. "Out of the dark days of our past it comes," he said. "Before we turned our faces west, a shadow was upon us." And he felt one lay a hand on his shoulder, and he turned and saw Hurin, who stood behind him, with a grim face, watching the kindling of the fires, and Hurin laughed. "A strange folk are ye," he said, "now cold, now hot. First wrath, then ruth. Under your chieftain's feet or at his throat. Down with Harding, up with Mantle. Wilt thou go up?" "The folk must choose," said Mantle, "and Harding still lives." "Not for long, I hope," said Hurin. Now the fires grew hot, and soon the hall of the Hallandin was aflame in many places. The men within threw out upon the faggots earth and water, such as they had, and great smoke went up. Then some sought to escape under his cover, but few got through the ring of men. Most were taken or slain if they fought. There was a small door at the rear of the hall, with a jutting porch, that came nearer to the garth wall than the great doors in front, and the wall at the back was lower, because the hall was built on the slope of the hillside. At last, when the roof beams were on fire, Harding and Offering crept out of the rear door, and they reached the top of the wall and stole out into the dike. And they were not mocked till they tried to climb out. But then, with shouts, men ran upon them, though they did not know who they were. Offering flung himself at the feet of one that would seize him, so that he was thrown to the ground, and Offering sprang up and escaped into the moor. But another cast a spear at Harding's back as he ran, and he fell with a great wound. When it was seen who he was, men lifted him up and laid him before Mantle. "Set him not before me," said Mantle, "but before the one he misused. I have no grudge against him." "Have you not?" said Harding. "Then you must be sure of my death. I think that you have always begrudged that the folk chose me to the chair, not you." "Think what you will," said Mantle, and he turned away. Then Harding was aware of Hurin, who was behind, and Hurin stood looking down on Harding, a dark form in the gloom, but the light of the fire was on his face, and there Harding saw no pity. You are a mightier man than I, Hurin of Thalion, he said. I had such fear of your shadow that all wisdom and logos forsook me. But now I do not think that any wisdom or mercy would have saved me from you, for you have none. You came to destroy me, and you at least have not denied it. But your last lie against me I cast back upon you ere I die. Never. But with that blood gushed from his mouth, and he fell back and said no more. Then Mantle said, alas, he should not have died thus. Such evil as he wrought did not merit this end. Why not? Said Hurin. He spoke hate from a foul mouth at the last. What lie have I spoken against him? Mantle sighed. No lie wittingly, maybe, he said. But the last charge that you brought was false, I deem, and he had no chance to deny it. I would that you had spoken to me of it before the moot. Hurin clenched his hands. It is not false, he cried. She lies where I said. Morin, she is dead. Alas, Lord, where she died I do not doubt. But of this I judge that Hurin knew no more than I till you spoke. Tell me, Lord, did she ever walk forth on this land? I know not. I found her as I said. She is dead. But, Lord, if she came no forth but finding the stone, thus sad in grief and despair, by the grateful sun as I can believe, then— What then? Said Hurin. Then, Hurin Thalion, out of the darkness of your woe know this. My Lord, so great a grief and so great a horror of the things that all came to pass upon us, and no man and no woman, since the setting up of the stone, has ever again gone nigh to that place. Nay, the Lord Orome himself might sit by that stone, with all his hun about him, and we should not know. Not unless he blew his great horn, and even that summons we should refuse. But if Mando so just spake, would you not hear him? Said Hurin. Now some should go thither if you have any ruth. Or would you let her lie there till her bones are white, would that cleanse your land? Nay, nay, said Mantle, I will find some men of great heart, and some women of mercy, and you shall lead us thither, and we will do as you bid. But it is a long road to win, and this day is now owed and needful. A new day is needed. The next day, when the news that Hurin was dead went abroad, a great throng of people sought for Mantle, crying that he must be chieftain. But he said, Nay, this must be laid before the full moot. That cannot be yet, for the ring is unhallowed, and there are other things more pressing to do. First I have an errand. I must go to the field of the worm and the stone of the hapless, where Morin the mother lies untended. Will any come with me? Then Ruth smote the hearts of those that heard him, and though some drew back in fear, many were willing to go. But among these there were more women than men. Therefore at length they set off in silence on the path that had led down along the falling torrent of Calabros. Well nigh 8 leagues was that road, and darkness fell, ere they came to Ningereth, and there they passed the night as they could. And the next morning they went on down the steep way to the field of burning, and they found the body of Morin at the foot of the standing stone. Then they looked upon her in pity and wonder, for it seemed to them that they beheld a great queen, whose dignity neither age nor beggary nor all the woe of the world had taken from her. Then they desired to do her honour and death, and some said, This is a dark place, let us lift her up, and bring the Lady Morin to the garth of the graves, and lay her among the house of Halath, with whom she held kinship. But Hurin said, Nay, Nyano is not here, but it is fitter that she should lie here not near her son than with any strangers. So she would have chosen. Therefore they made a grave for Morin, above Cabed Naoamath, on the west side of the stone. And when the earth was laid upon her, they carved on the stone, Here lies also Morin Thalion, while some saying in the old tongue, the limbs that long ago had been made for those of the people who had fallen on the march far beyond the mountains. And while they sang, there came a grey rain, and all that desolate place was heavy with grief, and the roaring of the river was like the mourning of many voices. And when all was ended, they turned away, and Hurin went about on his staff. But it is said that after that day fear left that place, though sorrow remained, and it was ever leafless and bare. But until the end of Beleriand, women of Breatha would come with flowers in spring, and berries in autumn, and seemed there a while of the grey lady who sought in vain for her son. And a seer and harp player of Breatha, Hurin, made a song, saying the stone of the hapless should not be devoured by Morgoth, nor ever thrown down, not though the sea should drown all the land. As after indeed befell, and still the tall Morin stands alone in the water, beyond the new coast that were made in the days of the wrath of the Valor. But Hurin does not lie there, for his doom drove him on, and his shadow still followed him. Now when the company had come back to Ningereth, they halted, and Hurin looked back, out across Thalion, towards the westering sun that came through the clouds, and he was loath to return to the forest. But Mantle looked eastward and was troubled, for there was a red glow in the sky there also. Lord, he said, tarry here if you will, and any others who are weary. But I am the last of the Halidin, and I fear that the fire which we kindled is not yet quenched. I must go back swiftly, lest the madness of men bring all Brethren to ruin. But even as he said this, an arrow came from the trees, and he stumbled and sank to the ground. Then men ran to seek for the bowman, and they saw a man running like a deer up the path towards the oboe, and they could not overtake him, but they knew that it was Arthur. Now Mantle sat gasping with his back to a tree. "It is a poor archer that will miss his mark at a thought aim," he said. Hurin leaned on his staff and looked down at Mantle. "But thou hast missed thy mark, kinsman," he said. "Thou hast been a valiant friend, yet I think thou wert so hot, and the cause for thyself also." Mantle would have sat more worthily in the chair of the chieftains. "Thou hast a hard eye, Hurin, to pierce all hearts but thine own," said Mantle. "Yea, thy darkness touched me also. Now, alas, the Halidon are ended, for this ruin is to the death. Was not this your true errand, men of the north? To bring ruin upon us, to weigh against thine own? The house of Harder has conquered us, and four now have fallen under his shadow, Brandir and Hunthel, and Harding and Mantle. Is that not enough? Wilt thou not go and leave this land ere it dies?" "I will," said Hurin, "but if the well of my tears were not utterly dried up, I would weep for thee, Mantle. For thou hast saved me from dishonor, and thou hast love for my son." "Then, Lord, use in peace the little more life that I have won for thee," said Mantle. "Do not bring your shadow upon Ethel's." "Why must I not still walk on the wold?" said Hurin. "I will go on till the shadow overtakes me. Farewell." Thus Hurin parted from Mantle. When men came to tend his wound, they found that it was great, for the arrow had gone deep into his side, and they wished to bear Mantle back as swiftly as they could to their elbow, to have the care of skilled leeches. "Too late," said Mantle, and he plucked out the arrow and gave a great cry and was still. Thus ended the house of Haleth, and muscle men warred and breath there when the time there was left. But Hurin stood silent, and when the company departed, bearing away the body of Mantle, he did not turn. He looked ever west, till the sun fell into dark cloud, and the light failed, and then he went down alone towards the hearth and Eleth.